Wait, what did Abbott just miss that could flip 5 supposedly safe Republican seats into a complete political nightmare? Because when Jasmine Crockett finally broke her silence on the Supreme Court's Texas redistricting decision, she didn't just clap back. She dropped a warning so serious that Republicans are having quiet panic meetings behind closed doors right now. And before I show you exactly why her response might be the single worst thing that could happen to Texas Republicans, you need to smash that subscribe button, because what I'm about to reveal will show you how their biggest legal victory could turn into their most catastrophic political mistake. It was early Friday morning, the kind of bombshell that instantly takes over every newsfeed, every political conversation, every social media timeline. The Supreme Court just ruled that Texas could move forward with their brand new redistricting maps for the 2026 midterms. These are the exact same maps that a federal panel already called discriminatory, the same maps that gutted minority voting power across multiple districts, the same maps that basically erased Jasmine Crockett's district as it exists right now. Greg Abbott's response? Instant victory lap. He tweeted out, "Texas is officially and legally more red. This is a victory for Texas voters, for common sense, and for the U.S. Constitution." And within literal minutes, conservative media went absolutely wild. Twitter became a celebration parade. Republicans everywhere were posting mission accomplished, saying Democrats got completely outplayed, claiming Texas was locked down red for the next decade, celebrating how progressive voices just got legally silenced. Then it got personal. The attacks on Crockett specifically started flooding in. She's done, fired by the map. Texas doesn't want her anyway. Bye-bye, Jasmine. It was brutal, raw political warfare, the kind of pile-on that happens when one side thinks they just landed a knockout punch that ended the fight for good. But then Jasmine Crockett fired back. And what came out of her mouth wasn't some defensive reaction or a concession speech admitting defeat. It was something that made political strategists on both sides immediately stop, rewind, and start completely recalculating everything they thought they knew about what just happened. Her first tweet came out surgical, not angry, not emotional, with the precision of someone who saw this coming from a mile away and had been planning for this exact moment. She wrote, "While today's decision from the Supreme Court is disappointing, it's not shocking, coming from a MAGA-influenced court. Here's the bottom line. Texans are now being told to vote under maps that a panel of 3 federal judges right here in Texas said were drawn to weaken the voices of Black, Latino, and minority communities. Those findings still stand. The Supreme Court simply pressed pause, allowing these maps to be used for the 2026 election cycle while the case continues. Hold on, that framing right there changed everything. She wasn't accepting this Supreme Court decision as some final judgment on whether these maps are legal. She was reframing it as a temporary procedural delay, forcing everyone to remember that federal judges already found these maps discriminatory. The celebration Republicans were throwing wasn't about proving their maps were fair. It was about getting permission to use maps that courts already flagged as deeply problematic while appeals keep grinding forward. She kept going, and her tone shifted from legal breakdown to direct political threat. Let's be clear, the Supreme Court did not say these maps are fair. They did not say these maps are constitutional. They did not undo what the lower court found. All they did was allow maps that the lower court flagged as discriminatory to stay in place. Sentence by sentence, she was surgically dismantling the entire Republican victory narrative. They didn't win the argument about fairness. They won a stay of execution for maps still under legal fire. There's a massive difference between we proved our maps are legal and we convinced the court to let us use our questionable maps while people are still proving they're illegal. That distinction matters, and Crockett was making damn sure everyone understood it. Then came the warning, the part that would become the most talked about, shared, and analyzed piece of her entire response. The part that flipped her reaction from defensive to offensive in one devastating move. To every politician celebrating this decision, let me offer a word of caution. Don't get too comfortable. These maps were drawn like political Russian roulette, slicing districts, tightening margins, and assuming voters wouldn't fight back. When you push district lines this far, you risk losing the very seats you thought you locked in. Political Russian roulette. Let that sink in for a second. She wasn't just calling the maps unfair. She was saying they're strategically reckless. That Republicans got so greedy trying to maximize every possible advantage that they actually created massive vulnerability in districts they thought were bulletproof safe. It was a prediction and a threat wrapped into one killer phrase. And she backed it up with receipts. We've already seen this play out. Look at Tennessee. They saw how tight that race got. If a so-called safe district can shrink to single digits, nothing is guaranteed. That Tennessee reference hit like a hammer. Republicans redrew districts there too, totally confident they'd locked in their majorities permanently. But in the special election that followed, a supposedly rock-solid Republican seat nearly flipped. The margin shrunk to less than 5 points in a district that had been double-digit Republican for years. It was living proof of Crockett's entire argument. Aggressive gerrymandering can backfire catastrophically when it energizes the exact voters it was designed to silence. Her second tweet added another devastating layer. Even Texas Republicans are bowing out of 2026. They see the writing on the wall and know these maps could turn into a disaster for their own side. Wait, what? This was brand new information that hadn't hit the news cycle yet. Republican incumbents in Texas are quietly declining to run for re-election? Sure, retirements happen every cycle, but the timing here tells a very different story. Experienced politicians looking at these redrawn districts and deciding they don't want to risk losing what was supposed to be a guaranteed safe seat? If Republicans themselves aren't confident in these maps, why should anyone else believe Abbott's victory declarations? Crockett's conclusion brought everything together. Part defiance, part political strategy, part direct challenge to the entire power structure that thought it just silenced her for good. So if Republicans think these maps guarantee them power, they're in for a surprise. The final say does not belong to Donald Trump, Greg Abbott, or a Supreme Court willing to look the other way. The final say belongs to the people of Texas. When Texans have their say, the results will speak for themselves. The response was instant and split exactly how you'd expect. Conservatives dismissed her as a sore loser in complete denial. But something else started happening, something the dismissive reactions completely missed. Her tweets were getting shared tens of thousands of times by voters, particularly Black and Latino voters, who felt seen, who felt their anger validated, who felt energized instead of defeated by her refusal to accept this as game over. Comments flooded in. "We support you, Jasmine. Keep fighting. The power is with the people. Maps drawn in back rooms only look invincible until voters see what was done to them." The emotional impact was massive. This wasn't just political commentary anymore. It was a rallying cry, landing perfectly with the exact communities the redistricting targeted. Behind the scenes, according to sources with direct knowledge of conversations happening in Democratic circles, Crockett's response sparked something nobody expected. Discussions about whether getting sired by the map might actually create bigger opportunities instead of ending them. If her House district was effectively eliminated, what stops her from running statewide? What stops her from using the massive national platform she's built to challenge for a Senate seat or statewide office where gerrymandering can't touch her appeal? The speculation got real credibility when political observers started digging into the data Crockett had referenced in her tweets. The new Texas maps did add what Republicans calculated as 5 safe GOP seats. But to create those safe seats, they had to spread Republican voters thinner across way more districts, shrinking margins in seats that used to be comfortably red. They played a zero-sum game, create new safe seats by making existing seats way less safe. A political science professor at the University of Texas analyzing the maps after Crockett's tweets said, "What Representative Crockett identified is the core risk in aggressive partisan gerrymandering. You can draw yourself more seats on paper, But if you've reduced your margins across the board, you're vulnerable to wave elections or strong turnouts from the minority party. The 2018 midterms proved this in multiple states. Gerrymandered maps that looked completely invincible suddenly cracked wide open when voter enthusiasm exceeded the models the maps were based on. Even more concerning for Republicans, Crockett's Tennessee warning wasn't some isolated fluke. In Wisconsin, aggressive Republican gerrymandering created multiple districts that flipped when Democratic turnout surged. In North Carolina, supposedly bulletproof safe seats became competitive when courts forced slightly less partisan maps. The pattern was crystal clear. Maximum gerrymandering creates maximum vulnerability when conditions shift. And Crockett was explicitly promising to shift those conditions. Her tweets weren't just commentary or hot takes. They were a